3 weeks later, the Galactic Council chamber looked almost normal again. New furniture had replaced what the humans had turned into barricades. Fresh paint covered the scorch marks on the walls. The viewing screen showed peaceful space, empty of warships and burning debris. But nothing would ever really be the same. Wu Jin walked into the chamber wearing a new uniform. Instead of the simple black suit of a diplomat, he now wore the blue and silver of Earth's diplomatic corps, with additional medals that marked him as a military officer. Behind him came Park So-young, no longer pretending to be a nervous assistant. The alien counselors who had survived the attack watched them with very different eyes than before. Theiss floated in a new tank, his tentacles moving slowly as he studied the humans. The Zorvak delegate had been replaced by a younger crystal being who rang nervously whenever Wu Jin looked in his direction. The Galactic Council recognizes Ambassador General Li Wu Jin of Earth, announced the session moderator, a being from a species that had stayed neutral during the crisis. Wu Jin took his place at what was now the human section of the council chamber. It was no longer a simple chair in the back. Earth had been given a permanent seat at the main circle, with the same status as species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. "Thank you," Wu Jin said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. "Earth is honored to take its place among the galactic community." "The honor is ours," Theiss replied, though his tone was very different from their first meeting. "We owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid." It was true. In the weeks following the Korthak attack, the full scope of the threat had become clear. The raiders hadn't just targeted the council station. They had planned simultaneous attacks on 12 different worlds, aiming to cripple galactic civilization in a single coordinated strike. Only Earth's intervention had stopped them. Human ships had appeared at every target, arriving with perfect timing to destroy Korthak fleets before they could complete their missions. The galaxy had learned that humanity had been watching, preparing, ready to act when needed. "The Korthak threat has been eliminated," reported Admiral Choi, who had been invited to address the council. "Our fleets conducted deep space operations to locate their hidden bases. We found 17 installations in sectors the Galactic Council thought were empty. All have been neutralized." "Neutralized?" asked the Nethys delegate. "Destroyed," Admiral Choi clarified. "Completely." The alien counselors shifted uncomfortably. They were still learning to deal with humanity's direct approach to problem-solving. "However," Wu Jin continued, "Earth believes this attack shows a larger issue. The galaxy's defense systems were not prepared for a coordinated assault. We would like to propose some changes." "What kind of changes?" Theiss asked carefully. Park So-young activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed star charts with shipping lanes, defense installations, and patrol routes marked in different colors. "A unified defense network," she explained. "Shared intelligence, coordinated response protocols, and joint training exercises to ensure all member species can work together in crisis situations." The presentation continued for an hour, covering everything from communication standards to weapons compatibility. It was clear the humans had thought about galactic defense in ways the Council never had. "This is very comprehensive," observed the Zorvak delegate, "but it would require significant changes to how we operate. Some species might resist giving up their independence." "Independence is important," Wu Jin agreed, "but independence won't help you if you're dead." His words hung in the air like a challenge. The counselors had seen what happened to species that couldn't defend themselves. The Korthak hadn't been interested in negotiation or compromise. "What about command structure?" asked a representative from the Alterian Federation. "Who would lead this unified defense force?" "A rotating council," Admiral Choi suggested. "Each member species would take turns as lead coordinator. Earth would be willing to serve first, given our recent experience with crisis response." "For how long?" Theiss wanted to know. "Until someone better comes along," Wu Jin said simply. The honesty of the answer surprised everyone. Most species would have tried to grab permanent control, but the humans seemed genuinely willing to share leadership. "There is one more thing," Wu Jin continued. "Earth requests permission to establish defense stations in key sectors. These would be joint facilities staffed by personnel from multiple species." "How many stations?" asked the session moderator. 47 to start," Park So-young replied, highlighting locations on the star chart. "More if the threat assessment changes." The number was staggering. The humans were proposing to build a network that would span half the galaxy. It would take decades and cost enormous amounts of resources. Earth is prepared to fund 60% of the construction costs, Admiral Choi added, in exchange for hosting rights and operational control. Where would you get such resources? The Zorvek delegate asked. We've been saving up, Wu Jin said with what might have been a smile. It was another reminder of how much the Council had underestimated humanity. Earth wasn't just a small planet with a few spaceships. It was an industrial powerhouse that had been preparing for galactic conflict since the day they learned about alien civilizations. The debate continued for hours. Some species worried about human dominance. Others questioned whether such extensive defenses were necessary. But in the end, the memory of burning Korthak ships made the decision for them. The proposal is approved, announced the session moderator, by unanimous vote. Afterward, as the counselors filed out of the chamber, this approached Wu Jin privately. I owe you an apology, the old Valen said. When you first came here, I thought your species was primitive, violent, unfit for civilized society. We are violent, Wu Jin admitted. But violence isn't the opposite of civilization. Sometimes it's what protects civilization. I understand that now, Thais replied. But I still wonder what will happen when there are no more threats to fight. What will humanity do with its weapons when peace finally comes? Wu Jin looked out at the stars through the chamber's great window. Somewhere out there, human ships were already moving to establish the first defense stations. Engineers and soldiers working side by side to build something that would protect species they had never met from dangers they could barely imagine. We'll find something else to protect, he said finally. That's what we do. Later, in his private quarters, Wu Jin activated a communication link to Earth. The face that appeared on the screen was young and curious, with the same dark eyes as her father. Hi, Dad, Li Haoyun said, waving from her bedroom in Seoul. Mom says you're going to be staying in space for a while longer. That's right, sweetheart, Wu Jin replied. There's a lot of work to do out here. Are the aliens being nice to you now? Wu Jin thought about that question. They're being respectful, which is different but maybe better. Mom also says you saved a lot of people. My team saved them. I just helped. Haoyun nodded seriously. Like when you saved our cat from that big dog? Something like that, Wu Jin agreed. Sometimes the strong have to protect the weak. Even if the weak weren't very nice before. Especially then, Wu Jin said. Being strong doesn't mean anything if you only use it for yourself. After the call ended, Wu Jin stood at his window looking out at the repaired station. Human and alien crews worked together on the hull, installing new defense systems that would protect the Council from future attacks. The sight should have made him proud. Instead, he felt the weight of responsibility. Earth now had a voice in galactic affairs, but it also had obligations. The other species would look to humanity for protection, for solutions, for leadership in times of crisis. It was exactly what his people had prepared for. But that didn't make it easy. Outside his window, the stars waited. Endless space filled with unknown dangers and potential allies. Somewhere out there, new threats might already be gathering. New challenges that would test everything humanity had learned about survival and diplomacy. But for tonight, the galaxy was peaceful. And that peace was protected by ships and soldiers who understood that sometimes the best diplomat was someone who could win a war. The battle inside the station had been raging for 2 hours when everything changed. Park So-young looked up from her tablet with an expression that mixed relief and fear. Captain, she called out to Wu Jin, we have incoming ships. Lots of them, Korthak reinforcements, Wu Jin asked, putting down the alien weapon he had been modifying. Around him, the council chamber looked like a junkyard. Broken furniture had been turned into barricades. Wires and explosives ran along the walls like mechanical vines. No, sir, Park replied, her voice strange. These ships are broadcasting human identification codes. The surviving alien counselors looked confused. But Earth only has a few ships, Thais said from his cracked tank. Exploration vessels, research stations. Wu Jin and his team exchanged glances. Park put it on the main screen. The viewing wall flickered to life, showing the space around the station. What they saw made the alien counselors gasp in shock. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace in precise formation, dozens of them. Then hundreds. These were not the small, peaceful vessels the galaxy associated with humanity. These ships were built for war. Dark metal hulls covered in armor plating, weapons that glowed with barely contained energy. They moved together like a school of mechanical sharks. Every action coordinated with deadly precision. "Behold," announced a voice over the communication system, "the Earth Defense Fleet 3rd Expeditionary Force." A new image appeared on the screen. A woman in a crisp military uniform, her gray hair pulled back severely. Stars and medals covered her chest, and her eyes held the cold confidence of someone who had won battles across multiple star systems. "I am Admiral Choi Hyun-woo," she said, "and I understand some people are causing trouble in my sector." The Korthak fleet, which had seemed so terrifying just hours before, suddenly looked small. The Earth ships outnumbered them 3-1, and even from a distance, it was clear they were designed for one purpose: destroying other ships as efficiently as possible. "Impossible," breathed the Zorvak delegate. "Where did these ships come from? How long has humanity had a fleet this size?" Wu Jin was already moving, grabbing weapons and ammunition. "Since we realized we weren't alone in the galaxy," he said. "Did you really think we would venture into space without being ready to defend ourselves?" On the viewing screen, Warlord Grimjaw's ugly face appeared. The Korthak leader was trying to look confident, but his yellow eyes showed uncertainty for the first time. "Human ships," he growled. "You will not interfere. This is a matter between the Korthak Empire and the Galactic Council. Leave now and we will let you return to your small planet." Admiral Choi Hyun-woo's expression didn't change. "I have a human diplomatic team on that station. Are they safe?" "Safe enough," Grimjaw replied. "For now? But if you attack us, they will die with everyone else." "I see." The Admiral's voice was calm, almost conversational. "In that case, I have a message for you from Earth. Please hold while I transmit it." The screen went blank for a moment. When it came back, it showed something that made even the hardened Korthak warriors step back from their controls. Every human ship had turned to face the Korthak fleet. Weapons that had been hidden behind armor plating emerged like the teeth of some massive predator. The ships spread out in a formation that looked almost like a web, surrounding the enemy vessels from every direction. "The message," Admiral Choi announced, "is this: nobody threatens our people, nobody." The first salvo from the human fleet lit up space like a miniature star. The weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of the massive energy beams favored by other species, the humans used swarms of smaller projectiles that moved faster than most sensors could track. A Korthak destroyer, one of their largest ships, simply came apart as thousands of tiny explosions walked across its hull. Another vessel tried to run, only to find human fighters blocking its path. The small craft moved like angry insects, too fast and numerous to target effectively. "Warlord Grimjaw," Admiral Choi's voice cut through the chaos. "I believe you have something that belongs to me. I would like it back. Your diplomats are dead," Grimjaw screamed, his composure finally breaking. "We killed them all." "Really?" The Admiral sounded mildly interested. "Captain Lee, could you respond to that claim?" In the council chamber, Wu Jin activated his communicator. "Admiral, this is Captain Lee Wu Jin. Diplomatic mission is secure. We have 13 human personnel and 11 alien counselors safe in the chamber. The rest of the station is mostly clear of hostile forces." "Mostly?" the Admiral asked. "Well, there are still a few Korthak running around, but we're handling them as time permits." Through the station's corridors, explosions continued to echo as the remaining human teams hunted down the last invaders. The Korthak, who had arrived expecting easy conquest, found themselves trapped on a station where every corridor had become a killing ground. "You want your people back?" Grimjaw snarled at the Admiral. "Come and take them." "If you insist," Admiral Choi replied. The human fleet began moving toward the station. But instead of the slow, careful approach most species would use to avoid hitting their own people, the ships accelerated. They were coming in fast and hard, like they were planning to ram the station itself. "They're going to destroy everything," the Nethys delegate gasped. "No," Wu Jin said calmly, watching the tactical display on Park's tablet. "They're going to dock." "Dock? At that speed?" "Human docking procedures are different from yours," Captain Choi explained from where he was setting up another explosive trap. "We call it aggressive boarding." The lead human ship slammed into the station's hull with impacts that shook the entire structure. But instead of exploding, they stuck like mechanical limpets. Cutting tools emerged from their hulls. slicing through the station's armor as if it were paper. "Boarding teams away," Admiral Choi announced over the communicator. "Remember, people, we have friendlies on board. Keep the explosions to a minimum." "Define minimum," came a reply from one of the boarding teams. "Less than last time." The alien counselors could hear new sounds echoing through the station. Heavy footsteps. "Weapons fire!" And something else, something that made their blood run cold. Human voices calling to each other in battle. "Sector 7 clear. Found more Korthak in the engine room. Taking care of it. Hey, save some for the rest of us." These weren't the voices of desperate people fighting for survival. They were the voices of professionals doing a job they enjoyed. In space, the battle was already over. The Korthak fleet, caught between the station and the human ships, was being systematically destroyed. Their weapons, designed to fight enemies who valued their ships more than victory, were useless against humans who would ram enemy vessels if that's what it took to win. "Please," Warlord Grimjaw begged, his ship listing and burning. "We surrender. We yield. Show mercy." Admiral Choi's response was cold as space itself. "You threatened my people. Mercy is not available." The last Korthak ship died in a ball of fire, taking with it the dreams of an empire that had thought the galaxy was theirs for the taking. On the station, Wu Jin received a message on his communicator. "Captain, this is Colonel Park Jin-woo, boarding team Alpha. We have secured the main levels. Permission to join you in the council chamber?" "Permission granted," Wu Jin replied. "But mind the furniture. We're still technically guests here." The council chamber looked like a war zone. Smoke hung in the air like fog, and the smell of burned metal filled every breath. Dead Korthak warriors lay scattered across the floor, their black armor cracked and smoking. The surviving alien counselors huddled behind overturned furniture, their eyes wide with shock. Wu Jin moved between them like a doctor checking patients after a disaster. But instead of medical supplies, he carried weapons and ammunition. His diplomatic team had spread out through the chamber, setting up defensive positions that turned the grand room into a fortress. "Status report," Wu Jin called out. 12 hostiles down in our sector," reported Kim Min-ho. He was kneeling beside a hole he had blown in the wall, placing small explosive charges along the corridor beyond. "But there are a lot more coming." Park So-young looked up from her tablet. "I have access to the station's security cameras. Korthak forces have taken control of the main landing bays, the power core, and the communication center. They're moving in organized groups toward critical areas." "How many?" Wu Jin asked, reloading his rifle with practiced movements. "At least 300 warriors on the station, maybe more." Counselor Thys floated in his damaged tank, purple liquid leaking from cracks in the crystal. "This is hopeless," he said, his voice weak. "We should surrender. Perhaps we can negotiate terms." Wu Jin looked at the old alien with something that might have been pity. "Counselor, your people have ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. But you've forgotten the most important rule of survival. Which is, when someone wants to kill you, negotiation is over." The human captain turned to his team. "Park, I need a complete map of the station. Every corridor, every maintenance shaft, every air vent. Kim, how much explosive material do we have?" "Enough to redecorate this place," Kim replied with a grin that would have made the Korthak nervous. "Good. We're going to play a game called Urban Warfare. The rules are simple. We know this station better than they do. We use that advantage." Park So-young's fingers flew across her tablet. "I've been mapping the internal systems for months," she admitted. "Standard diplomatic preparation, of course." The alien counselors stared at her. "Months?" the Zorvak delegate asked, his crystal body ringing with confusion. "But humans were only granted permission to visit 3 weeks ago." "Preparation is important," Wu Jin said simply. "We like to be ready for anything." The truth was more complicated. Earth's intelligence services had been studying the Galactic Council for years, preparing for this moment. Not the Korthak attack, which had been a surprise, but the possibility that humanity might need to fight for its place in the galaxy. Every human on the diplomatic mission was actually a military specialist. "You lied to us," Thys accused. "We told you exactly what we were," Wu Jin replied. "A species that specializes in conflict resolution. We just didn't mention our methods." An explosion echoed through the station, making the walls shake. Emergency lights flickered, and somewhere in the distance, alarms continued to scream. "They're trying to breach the security doors on level 7, Park reported. "I can slow them down, but not stop them." "Don't stop them," Wu Jin said, surprising everyone. Channel them. Force them to come at us through the corridors we choose. Kim, remember the Busan training ground? Kim Min-ho's grin got wider. Urban Combat Scenario 12. I like it. The two humans began setting up what looked like a complex trap. They placed explosive charges at specific points along the corridors, created false walls to redirect enemy movement, and set up overlapping fields of fire that would turn any advancing force into target practice. This is impossible, the Nethys delegate whispered, its gas form trembling. You are only 12 humans against hundreds of Korthak warriors. 13, corrected a new voice from the chamber entrance. Everyone turned to see Captain Choi Hyun-woo walking through the smoke. He was older than the others, with gray hair and scars that spoke of decades in combat. Until an hour ago, he had been listed as a trade representative. Captain Wu Jin nodded. I thought you were handling the situation in the lower levels. Situation handled, Choi replied, his uniform splattered with something that definitely wasn't his blood. 37 Korthak tried to take the reactor core. They will not be trying again. He tossed a Korthak helmet onto the floor. The alien counselors could see that it had been cut clean through by some kind of blade. The rest of the team? Wu Jin asked. Spread throughout the station. Following the plan. What plan? Thais demanded. What are you people? Wu Jin paused in his preparations. We are what happens when a species evolves on a world that tries to kill them every day. Where predators hunt in packs and prey fights back with tools. Where survival means being smarter, faster, and more vicious than everything else. He gestured toward the dead Korthak. These warriors are tough, well-armed, but they evolved on a world where might makes right. They expect their enemies to either submit or die quickly. And humans? The Zorvak delegate asked. Humans don't submit, Choi answered. And we don't die quickly. Park So-young looked up from her tablet. Movement on level 12. Large group heading this way. They'll be here in 10 minutes. Perfect, Wu Jin said. Everyone take positions. Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to survive an unfair one. The humans spread out through the chamber and into the connecting corridors. They moved with the efficiency of people who had trained together for years, each one knowing exactly what the others would do. What should we do? Thais asked. Stay down, Wu Jin advised, and try not to get in our way. The first Korthak to reach their position walked into a corridor that looked empty. The floor was littered with debris from the earlier fighting and scorch marks covered the walls. It seemed safe enough. The warrior took 3 steps before Kim Min-ho's explosives turned the hallway into a death trap. The blast channeled the survivors into a side corridor where Wu Jin was waiting with his rifle. Ambush tactics, Wu Jin explained to the cowering counselors as he methodically picked off confused Korthak. We learned them fighting wars on Earth. Sometimes the smaller army wins if it chooses the battlefield. More explosions echoed through the station as other human teams executed similar traps. The Korthak had expected to face ceremonial guards and frightened diplomats. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. Impossible. One surviving Korthak warrior gasped as Choi Hyun-woo appeared behind him like a ghost. How do you move so quietly? Practice, Choi replied just before his blade found the gap in the alien's armor. In the main chamber, the alien counselors watched in horrified fascination as the humans turned their elegant meeting hall into a fortress of death. These were not the primitive, violent species they had dismissed. These were apex predators who had learned to hunt in space. Your people, Thais said quietly to Wu Jin during a brief lull in the fighting. They are not diplomats at all. Every human is a diplomat, Wu Jin replied, changing magazines in his rifle. Diplomacy just works better when the other side knows you could kill them if negotiations fail. The alarm shrieked through the council chamber like a dying animal. Red lights flashed across the curved walls, casting strange shadows on the faces of the alien delegates. The massive viewing screen at the front of the room flickered to life, showing the space around the station. Ships, dozens of them. Black metal hulks covered in spikes and armor plating. They moved like sharks circling prey, their weapons already charging with angry red light. Impossible, This whispered, his tentacles going rigid in his tank. Those are Korthak ships. The Korthak were destroyed 50 years ago. Commander Zelef was shouting into his communicator. All security teams to battle stations. Raise shields. Where is our fleet? But before anyone could answer, the viewing screen filled with a new image. A face that belonged in nightmares. Scarred gray skin stretched over a skull that looked too big for any helmet, yellow eyes that burned with hunger for violence. When the creature smiled, rows of metal teeth gleamed in the light. "I am Warlord Grimjaw of the Korthak Empire," the monster said, its voice like grinding stone. "Your galaxy has grown soft and weak. You sit in your pretty chambers and talk about peace while real warriors starve in the outer darkness. Today the strong reclaim what is theirs." The transmission cut off. A second later, the station shook as the first weapons hit the outer hull. The lights flickered. Dust fell from the ceiling. Park So-young was typing frantically on her tablet, her fingers flying across the screen. 17 breach points, she called out to Wu Jin. "They're coming in fast." The council members were panicking. The Zorvak delegate was making high-pitched ringing sounds as cracks appeared in his crystal body. The Nethys representative tried to escape through an air vent but couldn't fit. Other aliens ran toward the exits only to find the doors sealed shut by emergency protocols. "Everyone remain calm," Commander Zelef announced, though his own voice was shaking. "Our security forces will handle this situation." The council chamber is the safest place on the station. Wu Jin stood up slowly. He removed his jacket and folded it neatly over his chair. Underneath, he wore a tight black shirt that showed the hard muscles of someone who had spent years training for war. Across his chest ran thin scars that looked like claw marks. "Commander," Wu Jin said quietly, "how many security officers do you have on this station?" 200, Zelef replied, trying to sound confident. "All highly trained. Trained for what? Crowd control? Stopping pickpockets?" Before Zelef could answer, the main doors exploded inward. Smoke and fire filled the chamber. Through the burning doorway came shapes that looked like demons from the deepest hell. Korthak warriors were 8 feet tall and covered in black armor that looked like it was made from the bones of dead planets. Their faces were hidden behind masks shaped like skull, but yellow eyes glowed in the dark sockets. Each one carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. The first Korthak through the door raised its plasma rifle and fired. The beam cut through Commander Zelef's ceremonial armor like it was made of paper. The alien security chief fell without making a sound. More Korthak poured into the chamber. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Their weapons swept back and forth, cutting down security guards who had trained for parades instead of real combat. "Please," Thijs begged from his tank. "We can negotiate. The council has resources. We can pay—" A Korthak warrior turned its yellow eyes toward the Valen. "We are not pirates," it growled. "We are conquerors. You have nothing we want except your submission." The creature raised its weapon toward This's tank. The old counselor closed his eyes and waited for death. The shot never came. Instead, there was a wet thud. The Korthak warrior looked down at the knife sticking out of its throat, right through a gap in its armor. It tried to speak, but only made choking sounds before falling forward. Wu Jin stood behind the dead warrior, his hand already moving to his briefcase. He opened it with practiced movements and began pulling out pieces of metal and plastic. In seconds, they clicked together to form a weapon that looked nothing like the ceremonial arms carried by station security. "Park," he called out without looking away from the enemy. "Execute Protocol Sparta." "Yes, sir," Park So-young replied. She was no longer the nervous assistant who had walked into the chamber. Her voice was steady and cold. Her fingers danced across her tablet, sending signals to systems throughout the station. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red light that made the Korthak look even more terrifying. But Wu Jin had fought in worse conditions than this. His rifle spoke 3 times. 3 Korthak warriors fell with holes through their armor where no gaps should have existed. Wu Jin had spent months studying their equipment, learning their weaknesses. He knew exactly where to aim. "Impossible," one of the surviving Korthak snarled. "You are just a soft diplomat." "Retired," Wu Jin corrected, diving behind a council seat as plasma bolts sizzled over his head. "Captain Li Wu Jin, Earth Special Operations. I specialized in making bad situations go away." The other humans in the chamber were moving now. The clerks and assistants from Wu Jin's diplomatic team had weapons in their hands. They moved with the same deadly efficiency as their leader, taking cover behind the alien furniture and returning fire with precision that spoke of years of combat experience. "How many of you are there?" This whispered, his tank somehow undamaged in the crossfire. "Enough," replied Captain Kim Minho, who until 5 minutes ago had been introduced as a cultural attaché. He tossed something small and round into a group of Korthak. The explosion that followed left nothing but smoking armor and scorch marks on the wall. The battle raged through the chamber. Korthak warriors were tough and well-armed, but they had expected to face security guards, not professional soldiers. The humans fought like they had been born for war, using every piece of cover, every angle, every trick they had learned in a lifetime of conflict. "Your people are warriors," Thys observed, watching Wu Jin reload his weapon with movements too fast to follow. "No," Wu Jin replied, putting 2 more rounds through a Korthak helmet. "We're survivors. There's a difference." Park So-young's voice came over the comm system. "Captain, I have control of the station's internal defenses. Where do you want me to direct them?" "Seal off sections 7 through 12, Wu Jin ordered, pulling a wounded alien counselor to safety. "Force them into Corridor 4. Kim, do you still have those party favors?" "Always." Kim Minho grinned, pulling more explosives from his diplomatic pouch. The surviving Korthak were regrouping near the main entrance. Their leader, a massive warrior with extra spikes on his armor, was screaming orders in their harsh language. But Wu Jin could see the confusion in their yellow eyes. This was not going according to their plan. "You cannot win," the Korthak leader roared. "We have hundreds of warriors on this station. Thousands of ships in our fleet." "Maybe," Wu Jin admitted, checking his ammunition. "But you made one mistake." "What mistake?" Wu Jin smiled, and for the first time the Korthak leader felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. "You attacked us while we still had our clothes on." The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a soft hiss. Ambassador Li Wu Jin stepped inside, his black shoes clicking quietly on the polished floor. He wore a simple dark suit and carried only a plain briefcase. Behind him walked Park So-young, a young woman with nervous eyes who kept checking her tablet. The chamber was huge. Curved walls rose high above them, covered in strange symbols from a dozen different worlds. 12 seats arranged in a circle, each one different. Some were made for creatures that breathed water. Others glowed with energy for beings made of light. At the center stood a simple podium where speakers would address the council. Wu Jin walked calmly to the human section. Other beings in the room stared at him. To them he looked boring. Just another weak human from a young species that had barely learned to travel between stars. His planet Earth was nothing special. No advanced technology, no ancient wisdom. Just a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy. Counselor Thys floated in his crystal tank, his tentacles moving slowly in the purple liquid. The Valen was old, maybe 1,000 years. His people had ruled space when humans were still living in caves. Thys looked at Wu Jin the way someone might look at a child trying to sit at an adult table. "So," Thys spoke, his voice coming from speakers around his tank, "the humans want to join our council." "How interesting." Other council members made sounds that might have been laughter. The Zorvak delegate, a being made of living crystal, rang like broken glass. The Nethys representative, who looked like a cloud of green gas, whispered in a voice like wind. Wu Jin sat down and placed his briefcase beside his chair. He looked around the room slowly, his dark eyes taking in every detail. Where were the exits? How many guards stood by each door? What weapons did the security officers carry? His face showed nothing, but his mind was working. "Thank you for allowing us to speak today," Wu Jin said. His voice was calm and polite. "Earth hopes to contribute to galactic peace." "Peace," Thys repeated, his tentacles curling. "What could your species possibly know about peace? You still fight wars on your own planet. Your history is nothing but violence and bloodshed." Park So-young's fingers moved quickly across her tablet. To anyone watching, she looked like she was taking notes, but the screen showed something else entirely. Ship movements, energy readings, signals from deep space that shouldn't be there. "Every species has a difficult past," Wu Jin replied. "We have learned from our mistakes." The Zorvak delegate made that glass-breaking sound again. "Learned? Your people killed millions of each other just decades ago. You poisoned your own air and water. You created weapons that could destroy your entire world. And yet we did not destroy ourselves," Wu Jin said quietly. "We found a better way." Thys's tentacles moved faster, showing his annoyance. "A better way? You mean space travel?" "Child's play. The Valen people mastered the stars when your son was young. We have brought order to thousands of worlds. We have prevented countless wars through wisdom and telepathic guidance." "Impressive," Wu Jin nodded. "Your achievements are well known throughout the galaxy." But his eyes weren't looking at this anymore. They had found Commander Zalef, the head of station security. The alien officer wore simple ceremonial armor and carried what looked like a ceremonial weapon. Wu Jin could see 17 weak points in that armor. The weapon was designed for show, not for actual fighting. The other security guards were the same. Pretty uniforms, shiny badges, weapons that probably hadn't been fired in decades. These people had forgotten what real danger looked like. Park So-young's tablet beeped softly. She glanced at the screen and her face went pale. More ships were moving in the outer system. Big ships, ships that didn't belong to any council species. She looked at Wu Jin and gave a tiny nod. "Your people intrigue us," said the Nethys delegate, its gas form swirling. So small yet so aggressive. "Tell us, Ambassador Lee, what did you do before becoming a diplomat?" Wu Jin smiled slightly. "I worked in conflict resolution." "Ah, a mediator," Thess said. "How peaceful." "Something like that," Wu Jin agreed. Park So-young was trying not to shake. The readings on her tablet were getting worse. Whatever was coming, it was big. And it was almost here. She wanted to warn someone, but who? The council thought humans were weak. They would never listen to a warning from Earth. The voting began. One by one, the council members spoke about humanity's application. Most of them said the same thing. Humans were too young, too violent, too dangerous to trust with real power in the galaxy. Perhaps in a few hundred years, this concluded, when your species has matured, when you have learned to control your violent impulses. Wu Jin listened politely. His briefcase sat beside him, looking ordinary. Inside, hidden parts waited to be assembled. His diplomatic team sat in the gallery above, watching. They looked like clerks and assistants, but each one had spent years learning how to kill quickly and quietly. "We understand your concerns," Wu Jin said when it was his turn to speak. "Earth is indeed young compared to your great civilizations. We have much to learn." He stood and walked to the center podium. The chamber was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems. Wu Jin looked at each council member in turn. "But we have one thing to offer that others may not," he continued. "Experience with chaos. Your worlds have known peace for so long you have forgotten what war really looks like. Is that a threat?" Commander Zalef stepped forward, his hand moving to his ceremonial weapon. "Not at all," Wu Jin said calmly. "Just an observation." Park So-young's tablet started beeping faster. The unknown ships were almost at the station. She caught Wu Jin's eye and held up 5 fingers. 5 minutes. Wu Jin nodded slightly and continued his speech. "Peace is precious, but peace maintained through strength lasts longer than peace maintained through hope." The council members looked confused. What was this human talking about? Their peace had lasted for centuries. Their combined fleets were the strongest in the galaxy. No one would dare attack the Galactic Council. Above them, in the darkness of space, massive ships dropped out of hyperspace. Ships that had not been seen for decades. Ships everyone thought were destroyed long ago. Inside the council chamber, Wu Jin finished his speech and returned to his seat. He placed his hand on his briefcase and waited. "Thank you for your words," Thess said dismissively. "The council will consider your application," and alarms started screaming.